my sincere thanks for having given me an opportunity as an resource person and also to be a chairperson for this occasion. And first of all, I'm very happy to be on this virtual conference. And the topic given on this also is very interesting for this technical session. And also, I'm so happy to welcome all the dignitaries on the virtual platform this on this occasion and this evening. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, you can proceed your session with the first presenter.
May I know who is present?
Sanchari Chattopadhyay.
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
She is going
Good.
to present her paper on the title
Yes.
Bhakshi Shilpa and Arundhati Roy's Challenging and Redefining the Stereotypal Beliefs of Sexual Identity and Performative Roles.
Well, ma'am, you can proceed.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for giving me the opportunity to present my paper here today. I would like to know if my screen is visible. Is it visible, ma'am?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So today I'm going to present a paper. The title is Bapsi Sidhwa and Arundhati Roy Challenging and Redefining the Stereotypical Beliefs of Sexual Identity and Performative Roles. So I'm going to discuss my favorite, two of my favorite writers today who always inspired me. So about what is my paper today? Bapsi Sidhwa and Arundhati Roy had their different approaches in their books regarding the issue of femininity and the formation of sexual identity. They have raised questions regarding the conventional beliefs about the issue of sexual identity, which are deeply rooted in our society. So instead of placing the female character in extremely difficult situations and portraying them as anti male or in order to address the issue of female oppression, they have subtly or directly challenged the age old beliefs regarding gender identities. So we don't see always that there is a clash as per se between the male and the female. Rather, it has a social reality which talks about the situations which we as female had to go through, especially under different social circumstances. The paper tries to analyze to what extent the stories have subverted the stereotypical beliefs. They explained that gender should not be shown in opposition to each other, but in juxtaposition to each other. So, how this female and male they come together and form an identity, or how are they different? That should be the approach. They have linked the ideas of community violence, nationality, religion, and class with sexual inequality, um, marital equation, and intergender relations to show how patriarchy works in every aspect of life. So, first, let's talk about. I have just taken some of the works of Sidhwa and Roy, like The God of Small Things, Ice Candy Man, The Pakistani Wife, and I have tried to analyze them under the gaze of feminism. So Sedhwa and Roy both have embedded their independent women character in self-expression, individuality, and independence. And they have curved their protagonists often as lost and confused, which made them look human. So it is not that women are flawless, like they can be like a goddess or something. Rather, these women are with flaws, with confusion, with errors, just like any human being should be. So Sidhwa's book, like Ice Candy Man, shows a plethora of women character. They might be promiscuous or virtuous. These women help each other to subvert patriarchy. On the other hand, Roy's book, God of Small Things, shows often it can show jealousy between two women. Thus, there is no fixed notion of women being savior of women or women tearing down each other. Identity is formed by individual uniqueness and not by societal norms of gendered behavior. So there are a lot of presumptions that if you are women, you should support women, or if you are women, you should always tear down women. So there is no such fixed concepts of gendered behavior. Rather, it depends on the individual. So in characters like Zaitoon in The Pakistani Wife or Bride and Sarla in Water, Sidhwa shows how domestic sphere as well as the social religious norms exploit female liberty. Roy, in her book, like Ministry of Utmost Happiness, portrayed a transgender person, evoking an idea that sexual identity can be formed by choice. Both of these writers, in their own ways, portrayed the journey of women character towards their liberation. So let's talk about solidarity of women amidst crisis in Ice Candy Man. So Sidhwa is one of the most celebrated work, Ice Candy Man. It explores the civil war that occurred during the partition of India in 1947. So it is told from the first person perspective of Lenny Sethi, a Percy child of about 4 year old. So what Sidhwa tried here is to show, she wanted to show solidarity in the experiences of women through different ages and different ethnic identity. Lenny and her family attempt to hide in plain sight as the two main ethnic identities, I mean here religious, more like religious identities, Hindu and Muslims, enter into the head-on collision. We find instances of violence against women through the character of Aya, Lenny's nurse. The issue of subjugation of women comes to the surface as the ice candy man, who once had a cordial relationship with Aya, perpetrates violence on her to conform to his rational identity. I mean, here it is shown how Aya underscores how act of abduction and rape use women's sexuality as a tool to articulate religious national enmity. Like Aya's abduction can be read as a punishment for her lack of adherence to cultural norms. Then again, it highlights how women's bodies were under patriarchal surveillance and regulation, and those who fail to abide by social rules will inevitably be discarded. So that is the point. Now, women of Lahore come together to save Aya despite individuality. It's organized violence against their sex that unites them all. So we have seen that there are different ethnic groups like Parsi community, but what happens? We see that at last, Lenny's mother, she like starts working some illegal activities just to save her fellow women from the clutches of the criminals. So it is not their being women that brought them together, but it is the atrocities that being women they had to face as a unified all, which came them brought them together. So here my point is that we women share a experience of being marginalized as a whole, and it comes to the surface especially during the times of crisis, social crisis. So now let's talk about breaking of stereotypes regarding female sexuality in Roy's God of Small Things. So here the story revolves around the love laws that existed in 1960s Kerala. While in Sidhwa, we saw women standing in solidarity due to their experiences. In this novel, we find women tearing each other apart due to their own experiences. So see, there is no fixed pattern. There is no norm of behavior, of gender behavior. It depends on individuals. For some, their experiences, our experiences shape our perception. So, however, the fact that their own will always come subservient to the patriarchal overarching influence in socio-cultural scenario is quite clear. So, they doesn't matter if they support each other or they tear each other down. The fact that all the characters here had to face some kind of patriarchal domination is what brings them together again. Roy has made a parallel between the Dalit Belutha and the women character of the novel to indicate their shared experience at the marginalized class devoid of any practical power to take decision. So, just like Subaltern, if I can dare to say a point about it, that they have been marginalized, right? So women as the weaker sex has been like treated as the weaker sex, has always faced this, have always faced this marginalization. We find Amu falling in love with Veluta, an untouchable Padavan. However, baby Kochamma's own experience made her adverse to the idea of a romantic relationship. At last, Amu has to give up on her love and Veluta has to die to conform to the social norms of love. A shocking, incestuous encounter takes place between the two twins, Esther and Rahil, at the end of the book. The episode is in juxtaposition to the love of Amu and Veluta, and it attributes a certain autonomy on Rahil, which her mother didn't have. So here, Amu's daughter is Rahil. So where we found that Amu tried. As far as Kochiyama is concerned, Kochiyama tried to love someone but failed and never dared to venture out again. In case of Amu, she fell in love. She left her husband with conviction and with her two children and dared to love again. But in case of Rahil, we see that she is sharing her grief in the way that she likes. She is autonomy. She is using her autonomy to exert her power, at least on her own body, if in nowhere else. So female characters are dubbed with all the human qualities like jealousy and pettiness, but shares similar loss of autonomy. So here we see that the characters are neither angel of the house nor femme fatale, rather human. Amos pursue independence and autonomy while being aware of her own sexuality. So here are some points where we see that Amo is talking about her own body. She is feeling her body, she is touching her breasts, and this again shows her that the notion that women are not sexually aware, they don't need sexuality, is subverted here. No damsel in distress, rather women as maker of destiny, the Pakistani Bride. So now let's focus to another masterpiece, that is the Pakistani Bride. So here Zaitun escapes from the brutal and harsh tribal society of Koshitan into which she had been married. So Zaitun is in fact a child of partition. She was bought by Qasim in Lahore, but soon her marriage was fixed. Miriam, which is evidently Qasim's wife, warns him that the gulf of difference between the life in hills and the city life. Her husband treats his wife as a sex object. Zaitun again proceeds in the cold and malevolent terrain. So she decides to leave her husband when the tortures are like no, up to the mark, like she cannot face any more torture. After a week, she reaches the river, almost half dead. Still, she gained hope as her freedom seems to be calling her from the outside of the river. But unfortunately, she is raped by two strangers on the banks. So Robert Ross stated that this novel deals specifically about patriarchy and the tradition governing the male-female relationship. What is so special about Pakistani wife? Here we see women redefining boundaries by venturing out on physically challenging journeys. So here we can say, if I dare to say, that Zaitun is somewhere a female Ulysses, right? Because even in case of emotional and moral boundaries, people used to think that women are like strong, like if it is a mental crisis, women will be there. But here Zaitun proves that in case of physical journey also, she can be a Ulysses. Zaitun's odyssey from the plains to the snow mountains and back to the plain is symbolic of the inner journey of the young women, from the fantasy world of love, romance and heroes to the harsh and hostile realities of life where man is the hunter and exploiter, cruel and inhuman, treating women like animals. Indira Bhatt said this about this beautiful work, The Pakistani Bride. Now, I have already came to the last part of my work, that is redefining gender roles in Ministry of Utmost Happiness. So this is one of the most striking work that questioned patriarchy like more than anything else. Pardon me. More than anything else. The story begins with Anjum, a Muslim transgender woman who was born intersex and named Aftaf. He was initially raised as a boy. Once Aftaf enters adolescence, however, he rejects his male identity and joins the Khawak, or House of Dreams, a local community of Hijras, taking the name Anjum. So Anjum claims for identity of an ordinary woman and not that of a mere entertainer or sex worker. Her dream of becoming a woman manifests itself as she embraces her motherhood, adopting an abandoned toddler named Zana. Along with her being ostracized for not adhering to a particular gender, she also she also fell victim to the violent attacks of a rioting Hindu nationalist group in Gujarat. The experience leaves her traumatized all through her life, yet she always asserted her identity as a woman and as a woman and did her best to achieve that. So here, what is the speciality here? Here, motherhood not essentially a biological construction but rather a matter of choice. This is what we can come up with. So redefining motherhood, in the one hand we find a character who is biologically incapable to conceive becoming a mother, while another woman, Tilo, here we have another part where Tilo as a character is introduced. She decides to give up on her child, I mean abort her child, as she was unwilling to become a mother despite being biologically able to conceive. Thus, the writer has uh, portrayed characters that subverted the gender rules and asserted that women themselves can only decide which role they want to take on in a particular social structure. So it is not always essential that just because you are biologically female, you have to adhere to your gender role, you have to be a mother. Similarly, just because you lack the biological needs which is needed to conceive, then you cannot be a mother. Gender is fluid, and one can it's a social construct, so you can change your construct according to your own preference or how you feel, simply feel. So, in conclusion, I can say that gender roles can be subverted and redefined. There is no gender identity behind the expression of gender identity. Is performatively constituted by the very expressions that are said to be its result, as Butler say. And then again, the story shows nuances of sexuality, and the stories justifies the idea that women are treated as the other, which Simone de Beauvoir attributed on the female gender. She said we can always see that here most of the time in Pakistani wife or also women are treated as like property. Like in Pakistani wife, we see that her father, the protagonist father, is considering like is finding someone to sell her daughter because of money, as if they own their daughter, as if it is property to be bought and sold. The work also shows how women in solidarity or in enmity shares the similar experiences as they
Bought in the gym.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Sure. So Sidhva and Arundhati Rai, the juxtaposition is not, it does not depend on similarity or it does not depend on opposition. I think the key here is to see how the characters, female characters, connect. So in Sidhva, we see that she is more entitled to show us women who are in socially adverse conditions, right? But in Roy, we see women who are more like the like takes control at last or tries to take control of their destiny. But what connects them is both of them, maybe in enmity or in friendliness, they share the similar experience of being denied the autonomy to take any decision. So that's what connects the characters. Thank you, ma'am.
Is good. So, being a different ethnic group, even women will come together to save their fellow people, but still they have an individuality, as you say. Am I correct?
Exactly, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. That's my point.
That's the right
Thank you
point
so
which
much,
you
ma'am.
have brought. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
And one more question I just want to ask you: in on what aspect you are basing this with the social, religion, female, cultural that is related to the present scenario? Can you tell anything?
Sure, ma'am. Sure. So, ma'am, I am from a remote place of West Bengal, which is quite near to the border of Bhutan. So, what I have seen here, we have like 6 to 7 tribes, and I have personally visited many of them. So, what I came up with that women there are still devoid of the autonomy, like they ask permission before talking to us. That made me realize that I, being from a privileged position of a scholar in a established university, should understand that women are still denied the autonomy, and it is important to address that they are as subaltern as maybe many other races, and we need to do something about it.
Good.
Ma'am,
Yeah, justification.
I would like to thank my co-author and my guide, Ms. Gyanvati ma'am, who is also here. Thank you, ma'am, for guiding me during the paper.
Anyhow, your view is very good, and we can be the role model for the society on projecting our thesis in connection to the society, especially to the women folk who are facing today all these situations. I hope so. And
Yes, ma'am.
something we can do today to our society. This is an opportunity which, through our literacy, we can project all this good work. Wish you all the success as a
Thank you,
scholar.
ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Then, shall we move to the second participant, ma'am?
Mahalakshmi.
I would like to invite Ms. Soumya Mary Thomas to take over the session.
Bhutan, London.
Yes, Soumya ma'am is not here. Shall we call the next presenter, ma'am?
Yes, Dr. Mahalakshmi can proceed with the third one. I think
Yes,
this is the third caller.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Suma Lalit, ma'am, you
Yes.
can present your paper now.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Suma Lalit, and I'm a research scholar in Elphinstone College, Mumbai, and my research guide is Dr. Savita Patil from Elphinstone College, Mumbai. Give me a moment to share my screen. Can you all see my screen? Is my screen visible?
No, ma'am, it's not
No,
visible.
not visible. One second.
Just అర్థం ఖర్చు refresh.
I hope it is visible now.
It's visible.
Okay. Thank you so much. My title for today's presentation is Voices of Voiceless in Eco-Womanism, African American Women and Earth Honoring Fates of Melanie L. Harris. Eco-womanism is a theory of African American women thinkers, researchers, and activists which connects social justice with earth justice. As defined by Melanie L. Harris, eco-womanist approaches can be described as reflective and contemplative study of eco-wisdom that is theorized, constructed, and practiced by the women of African descent. The discourse validates their lives, spiritual values, and activism as important epistemologies in eco-womanism. Dr. Melanie L. Harris is a professor of Black womanist thought and also womanist theology at Wake Forest University. Dr. Harris has manifested the theory of eco-womanism in her book, Eco-Womanism, African American Women and Earth Honoring Faiths in 2017, which we are going to discuss today. In this book, Dr. Harris discusses the theoretical frameworks of eco-womanism and gives methodological steps for practicing eco-womanism. She proposes 7 steps of eco-womanistic approach, and they are the first one, honoring experience and mining eco-memory. That is, this speaks about recalling and retelling the eco stories of Black American people and working on them and exposing the truths and debunking the myths and stereotypes against the Black communities and Afro-American women. And also they use critical, deconstructive, and constructive approaches to dismantle the oppressive system and to promote eco-womanism. Step 2 is critical reflection on experience and eco-memory. This speaks about the colonization of African people and also the ecological colonization. And here we can also see how she discusses women and the earth is being objectified, the similarities between the objectification of women and the earth, and also the examination of the structural oppression in all shared experiences. The third step is womanist intersectional analysis. It uses race, class, gender, and intersectional analysis to highlight strategies of earth justice. It also criticizes any kind of systemic oppression. Through the multi-dimensional lens, it uncovers racial, economic, gender, sexual, and environmental injustice. Step 4 is critically examining African and African American history and tradition. In this, it explores the themes of parallel oppression, history of colonization, and power in the word bound to earth. It speaks about the beauty to burden paradox. Step 5, engaging transformation. Okay, it speaks about the structural evil, and it says that structural evil should be exposed. And it also speaks about the needed commitment to social justice, human rights, and earth justice. And step 6 is sharing dialogue, sharing the dialogue of with interfaith or interreligious among the eco-humanists. And it's important to share the dialogue or information across the religion and across the faith. And it is one step of eco-humanism. And this step 7 speaks about taking action for earth justice. It is all about teaching eco-humanism and practicing eco-humanism for a best result against oppression. So here in my presentation, I have pointed out 3 kinds of marginalization or giving voices to 3 sections. The first one is voices of communities of color. Dr. Harris, in this constructing in this theory of eco-humanism, she gives voices to the communities of Black people or communities of color. Harris in this advocates the inclusion, or she advocates for inclusion of Black tradition, culture, and experiences in the environmental approaches. And she says that in the traditional environmental history, the experiences or the best practices of Afro-Americans are not included. Harris begins her work with her own history of eco-journey. She describes how her family migrated during the period of America's Great Migration due to the terror of Jim Crow. Her individual and shared memories of agriculture and connections with the nature is presented as representation of a common Black family and also Black community as a whole. She speaks about the environmental awareness of Black people and voices against not including Black environmental work in the mainstream environmental history. She also elaborates on eco-wisdom and African cosmology, which is source of knowledge. And the second point that I would like to make, the African American female voices being included in this theory. Dr. Harris also voices the experience of African American women. Harris builds her theory on the basis of womanism formulated by Alice Walker. She connects the social justice like class, race, and gender oppressions with the exploitation of earth. Eco-memories and critical reflection on experience of women, Harris gives a call to the researchers to reflect on Black women experiences. As an example, she takes up the experience of Alice Walker's mother's experience of hardship, how she worked so hard being carrying mother and having to take care of her children, younger ones, and also had to work in large field as a sharecropper family, a female in the family, and critically examining this experience of a Black mother. The third point, voices of earth justice. Ecohumanism also speaks for earth justice. Women experience and the treatment of earth by the humans are compared, and the similarities and interconnectedness are identified. As per Black ethnic ethics, earth is worshipped and not exploited. They have a mutually enriching relationship with nature. Eco-memory as a counter-memory is reconstitution of history to include the voices, perspectives, and experiences of Black people. Eco-humanism applying interdisciplinary approach makes a strong claim for new environmental history wherein everybody's experiences are included. In conclusion, this eco-humanism is an approach for social justice and also earth justice, and it is universally applicable. It's not only for Afro-Americans and people of America. For example, in India, Kiran Bedi has applied it to reformed the conditions of the hard jail, or we also have the example of Majora Carter applying it in South Bronx to transform the land which is filled with filth and where the Black people were living. And there are many more such examples. And this approach can be used by all the marginalized communities to fight against marginalization. And it also speaks about the voices of Afro-Americans, Afro-American women, and also the voices of earth, or it speaks for earth justice. Okay, these are my references. Thank you.
Yes, it's a very interesting, different title which you have taken. And voices of the voiceless between this Afro-American on that aspect.
Yes.
I just want to know how do you relate the social justice with justice? You have told that 7 steps you have brought in your work, and that is especially related to women experience.
Yes.
Retelling. Does it relate to any myth or any other geographical features?
This method could be applied anywhere to any marginalized community. She has given some steps wherein we have to think about or we have to take inspiration from our past or history, our own tradition. So she extensively goes back and studies all the work or their tradition, culture, and their ethics that they used to follow, their commitment to earth, that the practices that they had in Afro-American cosmology. And the similar thing can be done even in the case of India. Maybe if we can take the example of going back to our own scriptures and taking the inspiration, let me give one example, the step that education system has taken, that including so many Indian education, knowledge system in Indian education systems in Education Policy 2020. Is also can be one example wherein we can develop our own methods and which can be used as a tool.
Good. This is an innovative work, what I feel. Anyhow, it's good and appreciative. And do you bring any spiritual, you have brought one transformation needed commitment, that is religious dialogue. On that aspect, have you any religious concept for the transformation?
Yes. It is interdisciplinary. The religious aspects are also included in the method.
Well,
yes,
so you can secondary sources also. It will help for you to go both for your research work.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity.
And
Yes,
finally,
thank-
what a justification on bringing related to this findings with the theories. Can you tell me your because you have not concluded with your work, but still, what is your idea? What's your conception? That is, what's your concept to bring finally related to some theories you are applying? Eco.
Uh, eco-humanism in literature, how eco-humanism is being portrayed in literature and how it is effective for social justice and also earth justice, because environmental issues is one of the burning issues that we are facing, and how it could be incorporated in literature and also for social justice as well as earth justice.
So good that finally you can bring it to you, as you pointed to the voices of earth justice. Also, you can bring all the relationship which you are facing in the present scenario. Good.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The final participant, Zomani Singh. You can present now.
Yes, hello. My name is Zongwan Sangi, and I'll start presenting now. I also apologize because it seems like I cannot turn on my video. So let me just start sharing my screen.
No problem. You can proceed.
All right. So let me. Okay, so the topic of my paper is literary accounts of the subaltern COVID-19 pandemic experience in India. And as I've introduced myself, my name is Zomwan Sangi, a research scholar from the Department of English and Culture Studies in Mizoram University, Aizawl, Mizoram, India. From the start of COVID-19, although the wealthier members of society have been enjoying their free time in the luxury of their homes, there has been a sizable population who are famished and travel great distances in the hope of returning to their place of origin. For the lower class of humanity, life has always been harder, and in the time of COVID, it got even worse. If we look at their history, it is evident that they have always fought for their fundamental rights, identity, and to avoid becoming destitute, alienated, or exploited. A huge bulk of literary works have emerged with intensive interest in the voice of these subalterns. Another emerging genre of literature that is produced as an outcome of the pandemic is the lockdown literature. It has been stated that for many people, the fear of containment of restrictions being imposed upon is much more prevalent than the fear of contagion itself. Amitav Ghosh stated in an interview that he suspected there will be a huge wave of novels about the pandemic. True to his words, literature, in his view, they always explains how the world is changing, and a paradigm shift in world literature will undoubtedly be sparked by the current epidemic. The author of A Time Outside This Time, Amitava Kumar, also addresses how the word novel, as in both fiction and science, comes from a Latin word meaning new. So the idea of a novel, the idea of the novel coronavirus, and the news, they all related to the overwhelming changes it brought about. With the emergence of pandemic narratives or works that have pandemic settings in the field of literature, the subaltern experience of the let me just hide this one. Okay, of the othering and stigmatization that happened along with the outbreaks are brought to light in an endeavor to assess and situate the notion of bigotry and paranoia meted towards these subaltern sections of society. Some literary works, along with their authors, they will be briefly introduced by positing them within the framework of a literary paradigm. These novels, they shed light on the perils of the domestic workers, weaker class, especially the migrants, their loss of security, their sense of belonging, and the need to go home when the COVID-19 abruptly breaches their lives and livelihood. The authors, in their depiction of the stigmatization, racial subjugation, the bigotry and paranoia towards these communities, revealed the discourse of subalternity that has permeated the domain of culture, power, and knowledge in almost every epidemic outbreak. In order to look at the condition of humanity in the face of sickness and death, we may place our faith in the act of writing, using language as a landscape that can help us to explore, understand, and exercise skepticism against against the legitimacy, the denial, and unpreparedness of the state machinery. Through the observations made in locating this manifestation of suffering meted towards them, it can be surmised that the loss of trust and vicious cycle of these hate crimes, they will have much more lasting consequences rather than the disease itself. It is hoped that this study, the study of these narratives, they will shed some light on the truth and reality of what transpires during a pandemic. And before I go to the books, during the lockdown, we know how they had no access to transportation or housing, which resulted in significant losses for the foodless labor during the reverse migration. Also, this was one of the factors that prevented the lockdown in India from succeeding as anticipated and contributed to the negative effects it had on the migratory community, particularly the interstate migrants. We must always keep in mind that the subaltern section is nothing less than an essential component of society. And also, something worth pointing out is that gender-based violence has significantly risen as a result of the pandemic's increasing social and financial strain, social isolation, and mobility restrictions. In a statement made by the executive director of UN Women, she referred to violence against women and girls as a shadow pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in a shadow pandemic of violence against these women, according to a new data from UN Women Study. So, as I said, in order to assess and situate the notion of the sufferings meted by the migrants or meted by the subaltern sections of humanity, the first one is Homebound. It is a novel written by an award-winning journalist, Pooja Changoiwala, and the novel shed light on the perils of the migrants. And the protagonist is a 15-year-old girl identified as Meher, who had moved to the slums of Dharavi, Mumbai from their small village Balhar, which is in Rajasthan, in order to lead a better life. So the epistolary novel started with a letter dated on April 16, 2020, where she recalled the accounts of what transpired on the eve of a national lockdown. And next, we have Jamlo Walks, which is it is a picture. It's like a graphic novel. It's a very short children's book. And here, Samina Mishra, who is the author of Jamlo Walks, and also Tariq Aziz is the illustrator. The 12-year-old Jamlo Makdan is a migrant worker who began the treacherous trek back to her home in Bastar, Chhattisgarh from the chili fields in Telangana. And this is the subject of so this subject is it's actually a real story. It's based on a real incident. And regrettably, she never returned. The picture book beautifully and tenderly depicts the young girl's journey. She walks home with a spark of optimism in her eyes, and the chilies she receives as pay in her bag. The author also created a 37, page children's book that offers two simultaneous stories while illustrating several lockdown scenarios. She relates the story of Rahul and Tara, who live with their parents and take online lessons, in addition to the account of Jamalo's journey. So it's like she juxtaposes between the different sections of the children. And then next we have 1,232 kilometer, The Long Journey Home. And it is written by a journalist, filmmaker, Vinod Capri, which chronicles the terrifying experience of 7 laborers who bicycle from Ghaziabad, which is close to Delhi, to Madhepur in Bihar, covering a distance of more than 1,200 kilometers within 7 days and nights. And Capri, he actually set out to make a documentary film on this biggest migrant exodus in India after partition. And this book details the physical and mental harm suffered by the 7 characters. In this nonfiction, poignant incidences were turned into pages. Capri observed the migrants enduring the brunt of police abuse and humiliation with fortitude and reviving themselves with unanticipated support from nice strangers. Outstretched hope triumphed over the pain of sadness, which is why these stories, they will endure for a long time. And the next one is Essential Items, Stories from a Land in Lockdown by Udayan Mukherjee, who is an Indian journalist and an economist at the pinnacle of his profession. He tries to investigate the current precariousness of um, existences during the lockdown, and they are insightful and introspective, written in a clear and concise style with the intention of resonating not only with the psyche of the very person but also with everyone who reads these profound passages. Conclusion: a paradigm shift in the current epistemology is primarily sparked by humanist perspective on the changes in human history and civilization, as well as an author's desire to speak out against social injustice, moral crisis, and the voicelessness of his fellow humans. Literature cannot but respond to the time and context in which it is produced, and thus it goes through the historicity of text and the textuality of history. In order to accommodate a subjective as well as objective account and analysis, a new space of negotiation, parallel reading, and juxtaposition between history and literature, a text and in its context is most effective. Fictional narratives and stories, they offer both subjective and objective accounts. They allow first-hand experience that could be felt through the characters, but also tend to distance themselves from the reality on the basis of them being works of fiction. Amidst the apprehensive atmosphere, the circulation of conspiracy theories and fake news, the many incomprehensible and futile attempts to try and make sense of everything, one may turn towards the writing, reading, and study of pandemic literature, for it is where the underlying truths may be disclosed and where we may rediscover the true essence of humanity. Thank you.
It's a good presentation, Sumaki. And you have brought all the experiences of the society which you have seen. This is the fundamental ideas and of the humanities. And do you like to project particularly any aspect which could transform the society related to your work?
Yes, ma'am. I was actually when I was choosing the particular works, I was choosing works that represent especially the subaltern, the domestic workers, the subaltern sections of society, like the domestic workers, the weaker sections like the women, children, and the migrant laborers. So I was focusing on that so that their voices could be heard, their experiences, like we could feel and share, witness their stories through, especially through literary representation. So I hope that, like, maybe during the, especially during the lockdown, the first, second lockdown, we kind of see them as, statistics, as mere people, so it doesn't affect us that much, but when they are represented through their through literature, we could hear their stories, we could hear their backgrounds, their voices. So I think it's really important.
It's good. It's very true, which we all have experienced, and it's very appreciable that you have brought all the present scenario with the experience to the reality through our literary work. Keep it up, and wish you all success for your proceedings, for your work to complete also, because it will be a situation which is unforgettable for also the human who loses all their identity by means of all these pandemic situations have started to regain, but it should be of some justice related to the human values, what I feel.
Yes,
Oh,
yes, I agree. Thank you, ma'am.
okay, thank you. It's a good presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. And congratulations to all the participants. I would like to express my gratitude to all the chairpersons of the day, especially Dr. Suma, ma'am, for accepting our invitation. Thank you, ma'am.